he proposed to his last girlfriend with a diamond that cost more than a house back then. One live-in love witnessed him shoot a TV set because singer Robert Goulet appeared on screen. His final fiancée was the one who tragically found him unresponsive. Another flame dated both the king of rock and roll, A&D, the king of cool Steve McQueen, at the same time for a bit. A beauty queen, Miss Tennessee, lived with him at Graceland for over 4 years. He had secret code names for some of the women in his life, even after his marriage ended. Number 8, the one he met through her politician dad. Jo Cathy Brownlee entered Elvis's orbit in a way that sounds almost like a movie plot. It was around July 1975. Her father, it said, was involved in politics or law enforcement in Memphis and knew Sheriff Bill Morris, who in turn knew Elvis. Apparently, Elvis expressed interest in meeting Jo Cathy after seeing her picture. Imagine getting that call. Their first meeting happened at the Memphian Theater, Elvis's go-to spot for private movie screenings late at night. He loved renting out the entire place just for himself and his friends, and maybe a date. Jo Cathy went along, and sparks reportedly flew. Elvis was known for his charm, and when he turned it on, it was hard to resist. They started seeing each other. Jo Cathy wasn't just a local girl. She was striking, fitting the mold of women Elvis often found attractive. Their time together wasn't long, stretching over a few months in the summer and fall of 1975, but it was intense, as things often were with Elvis. She got a glimpse into his world, the late nights, the movies, the generosity, the unique atmosphere of Graceland, and the bubble he lived in. She was seen with him in Las Vegas during his engagement at the Hilton Hotel in August 1975. Being with Elvis in Vegas was a whole other level of experience. The energy of the shows, the crowds, the high-stakes gambling, though Elvis wasn't a big gambler himself, and the constant presence of his entourage, the Memphis Mafia. Jo Cathy was right there, part of the King's Court, albeit temporarily. What were their dates like? Beyond the private movie screenings, it involved hanging out at Graceland, maybe riding motorcycles or horses around the property, and just existing within Elvis's nocturnal schedule. He often slept during the day and came alive at night. Anyone dating him had to adapt to this upside-down lifestyle. Sources suggest Elvis showered her with gifts, a common practice for him. Jewelry, maybe even a car. These were typical tokens of affection from the king. For Elvis, spending money on people he cared about was a way of showing love and control, ensuring loyalty and happiness within his circle. However, like many of Elvis's relationships during this period, it seemed to burn brightly but quickly. By the fall of 1975, the romance reportedly cooled down. The reasons why these flings often ended are varied. Sometimes Elvis's attention wandered. Sometimes the women couldn't handle the intensity or the lack of normalcy in his life, or perhaps the initial infatuation just faded. Being Elvis Presley's girlfriend was not a typical dating experience. It came with immense scrutiny, isolation within his inner circle, and the challenge of dealing with his fame, his moods, and his unconventional lifestyle. Jo Cathy Brownlee's time with Elvis represents a snapshot of his life in the mid-70s, still searching for connection, enjoying female companionship, but perhaps finding it increasingly difficult to maintain a stable, long-term relationship he had with profound bond he shared with Priscilla, and even the significant relationship he had with Linda Thompson, who he was technically still involved with when he first met Jo Cathy, highlighting the overlapping nature of his latest times. Jo Cathy remains one of the women linked to Elvis in that specific post-divorce period, a reminder of his enduring charisma and the whirlwind romances that often characterized his later years. Number 7. The actress who also dated Steve McQueen. Barbara Leigh was a stunning actress and model who caught Elvis's eye before his divorce from Priscilla was finalized, but their connection is often mentioned in the context of women linked to him around that transitional period. Their involvement reportedly began around 1970 to 1971, while Elvis was still married primarily during his engagements in Las Vegas. Leigh was already making a name for herself, appearing in films like Pretty Maids All in a Row, and later, notably, alongside Steve McQueen in Junior Bonner. She wasn't just another pretty face. She had her own career and moved in Hollywood circles. This perhaps made her different from some of the younger, less established women Elvis sometimes dated. Her relationship with Elvis was passionate, but also complicated by his marriage and his existing lifestyle. They met backstage in Vegas, a common scenario. He was instantly smitten. She was captivated by his legendary charm. They spent time together in Vegas, Los Angeles, and Palm Springs. Leigh described Elvis as gentle, spiritual, and madak, but also sometimes troubled. One of the most intriguing aspects of Leigh's story is her simultaneous involvement with another icon, Steve McQueen. For a period primarily in 1972, Leigh has stated she was dating both Elvis Presley and Steve McQueen. Talk about navigating two different worlds of superstardom. She reportedly found McQueen more grounded and straightforward, while Elvis lived in a more insulated, almost surreal environment surrounded by his entourage. Juggling relationships with two of the biggest male stars on the planet must have been an extraordinary and likely stressful experience. While the peak of their romance arguably occurred before the divorce was finalized in October 1973, their names remained linked. Elvis's split from Priscilla was a process starting with their separation in February 1972. Leigh was part of his life during this turbulent time. She witnessed his hurt and his attempts to cope with the separation. Did they see each other after the official divorce? Accounts vary or are less detailed about significant involvement after late 1972 or early 1973. Linda Thompson entered Elvis's life in July 1972 and quickly became a central figure. It seems Leigh's romantic connection with Elvis largely faded as Linda's grew and as Leigh perhaps chose to focus elsewhere, possibly on McQueen or her own career. By the time the divorce papers were signed, sealed, and delivered in October 1973, Linda Thompson was firmly established as the main woman in Elvis's life. However, Barbara Leigh is frequently included in discussions about Elvis's significant female companions around the time his marriage ended. Her connection represents that specific period of transition, the separation years leading into the final divorce decree. She provided companionship and intimacy during a difficult phase for Elvis. She has spoken and written about her time with Elvis, offering insights into his personality, his spirituality. They reportedly discussed metaphysical topics and the complexities of being close to him. Her perspective is valuable because she knew him during a pivotal moment of change in his personal life. She saw the vulnerability beneath the superstar facade. So, while the bulk of their romance predates the final divorce date, Barbara Leigh's link to Elvis is undeniable and frequently discussed in the narrative of his post-Priscilla life, highlighting the kind of intelligent, beautiful, and independent women he was often drawn to, even amidst the chaos of his final years. Her connection to both Elvis and McQueen also adds a layer of Hollywood intrigue that keeps her story fascinating. Number 6. The backup singer, who was more than just a voice. Cathy Westmoreland wasn't just a backup singer for Elvis. She was the high soprano voice that soared above the band during his concerts from 1970 until his final show in 1977. Her powerful, operatically trained voice added a distinct layer to his live performances, particularly on ballads like Unchained Melody, or dramatic numbers like An American Tiad. But her relationship with Elvis, especially after his divorce, seemed to go beyond just professional colleagueship. Elvis affectionately nicknamed her Minnie Mouse because of her petite stature and high voice. They shared the stage for hundreds of performances across the United States. This constant proximity, the shared adrenaline of performing, and the unique bubble of Elvis's touring life naturally fostered a close bond. After his divorce from Priscilla in October 1973, Elvis relied heavily on the familiar faces around him, both for professional support and personal companionship. Cathy was part of that inner circle on the road, and sometimes at Graceland or his other homes. Their relationship was complex and has been described in various ways by different people, including Cathy herself in her autobiography. She described a deep affection and a sometimes flirtatious, sometimes intimate, but often confusing connection with Elvis. He showered her with attention and gifts, including jewelry and reportedly even a car at one point, his typical gestures of appreciation and control. They shared late-night talks, moments of vulnerability, and the unique understanding that comes from working so closely together under intense pressure. Elvis respected her musical talent immensely. He would often feature her solo spots in his shows, giving her the chance to shine. This professional respect seemed to translate into a personal closeness. She was someone he could talk to, someone who understood the demands of the stage. However, the exact nature of their personal relationship remains somewhat ambiguous. Was it purely platonic friendship? Was it occasionally? Was it something in between? Cathy herself has described moments of physical intimacy, but also emphasized the spiritual and emotional connection they shared. Elvis seemed to place her in a special category, not quite a girlfriend in the same vein as Linda Thompson or Ginger Alden, but much more than just an employee. There were reports of jealousy from other women in Elvis's life regarding his closeness to Cathy. Being a constant presence on tour, sharing intimate moments on stage, like when he would introduce her or interact with her during songs, naturally led to speculation and sometimes friction within the group. Cathy witnessed Elvis's declining health in the later years firsthand. Being on stage with him night after night, she saw the changes, the struggles, the reliance on prescription medication that became increasingly apparent. She described moments of brilliance alongside moments of concern. Her accounts provide a unique perspective on his final years from someone who was consistently close to him in a professional and personal capacity. Their connection endured right up until the end. She was part of the touring group preparing for the next leg of the tour when Elvis died in August 1977. His death was a profound shock to her, as it was to everyone who knew and worked with him. Cathy Westmoreland's link to Elvis after his divorce is significant because it wasn't just a fleeting romance. It was a sustained, multifaceted relationship built over years of working together. She was a confidant, a respected musical partner, and a recipient of his affection and generosity. Her story adds another layer to the understanding of Elvis's complex world, showing his need for different kinds of connection, professional, emotional, and perhaps occasionally romantic, with the women around him. She remains a key figure in the narrative of his concert years and his personal life during that final chapter. Number 5. The Karate Connection. Date. Mindy Miller, a young actress and a model, stepped into Elvis's world around 1975. Like many others, she was introduced to him through mutual acquaintances within the Memphis or Los Angeles scenes where Elvis often spent his time. She was blonde, beautiful, and had a vibrant personality that seemed to mesh well with Elvis's energy at the time. Their meeting story often involves Elvis's passion for karate. Elvis was a devoted practitioner and held a high-level black belt. He often incorporated karate moves into his stage performances and shared his enthusiasm for martial arts with those around him. Mindy was reportedly introduced to him at, or through connections related to, Ed Parker's karate studio in California, a place Elvis frequented. Some accounts suggest she was even dating Ed Parker's son at one point. Once Mindy caught Elvis's eye, he pursued her with his characteristic charm and intensity. Their relationship blossomed in 1975, a period when Elvis was still officially with Linda Thompson, but their long-term relationship was starting to show signs of strain, and Elvis was known to see other women occasionally. Mindy became one of these significant others for a time. She spent time with Elvis at Graceland and in California. She got the full Elvis experience. The late-night movie screenings at the Memphian, the spontaneous shopping sprees where Elvis would buy extravagant gifts, the flights on his private jet, the Lisa Marie, and the constant hum of activity surrounding the king. She was photographed with him, looking happy and clearly enjoying the whirlwind. One specific anecdote often associated with Mindy Miller involves Elvis's racquetball court at Graceland. Elvis had the court built in 1975, and it quickly became a favorite hangout spot. It wasn't just for playing racquetball. It had a luxurious lounge area with a bar, seating, and even a piano. Mindy was reportedly present during some of the time spent at this new addition to the estate, experiencing Elvis's enthusiasm for his latest project. Like other women Elvis dated, Mindy received generous gifts. Cars, jewelry, clothes, these were standard expressions of affection from Elvis. He enjoyed playing the provider and seeing the delight his gifts brought. For a young woman like Mindy, being swept off her feet by the world's biggest star and showered with presents must have been incredibly overwhelming and exciting. However, dating Elvis also meant dealing with his possessiveness, his moods, and the ever-present entourage. It required adapting to his nocturnal lifestyle and accepting the limitations that came with his immense fame. Privacy was virtually non-existent, and loyalty to Elvis, above all else, was expected. Their relationship seems to have lasted for several months in 1975, and perhaps into early 1976. Why did it end? As with many of Elvis's shorter relationships during this period, the specific reasons aren't always clear. Sometimes, Elvis's attention simply shifted. Linda Thompson was still a major part of his life then, creating a complex dynamic. Eventually, Elvis's focus moved towards Ginger Alden, later in 1976. Mindy Miller's time with Elvis provides another glimpse into his life during that specific window of the mid-1970s. She was part of the rotation of beautiful women who brought youth, energy, and companionship into his increasingly isolated world. Her connection through the karate scene highlights one of Elvis's major personal interests outside of music. She remains one of the documented women Elvis dated seriously, however briefly, in the years following his divorce, a part of the complex tapestry of his later personal life. She experienced the magic and the madness of being close to the king during his final years. Number 4. The Playboy cover girl who got cars and trips. Sheila Ryan was another beautiful woman who became a significant companion to Elvis Presley in the years following his divorce. An actress and model, she even graced the cover of Playboy magazine in October 1973, the very same month Elvis's divorce from Priscilla was finalized. Talk about timing. Their paths reportedly crossed in Las Vegas, perhaps backstaged at one of his shows, or through mutual friends. Vegas was Elvis's kingdom during this era, the place where he performed long engagements at the Hilton and held court. Sheila, with her stunning looks and outgoing personality, fit right into the glamorous Vegas scene. Their relationship seemed to take off around late 1974 and continued through parts of 1975 and into 1976. This period placed her squarely between the fading of the Linda Thompson relationship, though they didn't officially break up until late 1976, and the beginning of Elvis's involvement with Ginger Alden. Sheila became one of the main women in his life during this time. Elvis was known for being incredibly generous with his girlfriends, and Sheila Ryan was no exception. He reportedly showered her with lavish gifts. Cars were a favorite gift from Elvis. He loved giving Cadillacs and Lincolns. Sheila is said to have received at least one vehicle from him. He also likely gifted her expensive jewelry and took her on trips, flying her on his private jet, the Lisa Marie. She spent considerable time with him, not just in Vegas, but also at Graceland in Memphis and his homes in California. She became part of the inner circle, getting to know the Memphis Mafia and experiencing life inside Elvis's unique world. This meant adapting to his unusual hours, his need for constant activity and entertainment, like those late-night movie screenings, and the general intensity of being around him. Photos from the time show Elvis and Sheila together, looking like a couple. She accompanied him to events and was seen with him publicly on occasion. By all accounts, it was a genuine romantic relationship, and she seemed to provide companionship and affection during a time when he was grappling with health issues and the pressures of fame. What was their dynamic like? Sheila was described as having a bright, bubbly personality. Perhaps she brought a sense of fun and lightheartedness to Elvis's life. Being with Elvis meant navigating his moods and his expectations. Loyalty was paramount. Those close to him often described his need for attention and his occasional jealousy. Sheila, like others before and after her, had to manage these aspects of his personality. The relationship, however intense, eventually ran its course. By 1976, Elvis's attention was shifting. He met Ginger Alden in November of that year, and she quickly became the primary focus of his romantic life. Elvis's relationship with Sheila Ryan faded out around this time. After her time with Elvis, Sheila continued her life and career. She later married actor James Caan in 1976. The same year, her relationship with Elvis ended. They had a son, Scott Caan, also now a successful actor, before divorcing a year later. Sheila Ryan passed away in 2012. Her time with Elvis places her among the significant women he was seriously involved with after his marriage ended. She wasn't just a fleeting acquaintance, she was a steady girlfriend for a considerable period, experiencing the highs and lows of life with the king during his final years. She received the grand gestures of generosity typical of Elvis and provided companionship during a turbulent phase of his life. Sheila Ryan remains a notable figure in the story of Elvis's post-divorce romances. Number 3. The Viva Las Vegas co-star, who remained a lifelong friend. Anne, Margaret, and Elvis Presley's connection was electric, forged years before his divorce on the set of Viva Las Vegas in 1963. Their chemistry was undeniable, both on screen and off. They embarked on a passionate love affair that lasted for about a year. Elvis was deeply captivated by her energy, talent, and spirit, which mirrored his own in many ways. She understood the pressures of fame, and they shared a bond that many believe was one of the most significant romantic connections of his life. However, Elvis was already committed, at least in his mind and promises, to Priscilla, who was waiting for him back at Graceland. He ultimately chose to honor that commitment, marrying Priscilla in 1967. This decision reportedly left both Elvis and Anne Margaret heartbroken. Anne Margaret later married actor Roger Smith in 1967, the same year Elvis married Priscilla. But here's the crucial part regarding the post-divorce era. Their deep bond didn't just vanish, even though they both married other people. And the romantic relationship ended in the mid-60s. Elvis and Anne Margaret maintained a unique and enduring connection throughout the rest of his life, including the years after his divorce was finalized in October 1973. While they weren't romantically involved after their initial affair, the frequency and depth of their contact kept them linked in a profound way. Elvis reportedly continued to send Anne Margaret flowers, often guitar-shaped floral arrangements, for every one of her stage openings in Las Vegas right up until his death. This gesture spoke volumes about his continued affection and respect for her. They also had code names for each other. He was sometimes EP or used other aliases, and she was often referred to as Scooby or Bunny in his circle. This hinted at a level of familiarity and shared history that persisted long after their romance ended. Friends and members of Elvis's entourage noted that Anne Margaret held a special place in his heart. She was perhaps the one woman who truly matched his energy and understood his world in a way few others could. When news of Elvis's death broke in August 1977, Anne Margaret was devastated. She and her husband, Roger Smith, flew to Memphis to attend his funeral, one of the few celebrities to do so. Her grief was palpable and widely reported, highlighting the depth of their lifelong connection. So while Anne Margaret wasn't a romantic partner of Elvis after his divorce, in the same way Linda Thompson or Ginger Alden were, she was arguably one of the women most frequently and significantly linked to him emotionally throughout that period. Their link wasn't about dating. It was about an enduring friendship, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding rooted in their shared past. This connection is often highlighted in discussions about Elvis's relationships because it represents something different, a deep, lasting bond that transcended romance. It speaks to the impact they had on each other's lives. Even when he was involved with other women after Priscilla, Anne Margaret remained a constant, albeit distant presence in his thoughts and gestures. Her name frequently comes up because their initial romance was so legendary, and the evidence of their continued, albeit platonic, connection after his divorce reinforces the idea that she was always someone special to him. Their story is a poignant reminder of a love that evolved into a lifelong, respectful friendship. Number 2. The last fiancé who made the tragic discovery. Ginger Alden was the last woman Elvis Presley was seriously involved with, and the one he was engaged to when he died. Their story is intrinsically linked to the final chapter of his life. They met, rather formally, through Ginger's family connections. Her father had met Elvis previously, and in November 1976, Elvis invited Ginger, her mother, and her sisters, one of whom, Terry, had briefly dated Elvis years prior and was a former Miss Tennessee, to Graceland. Ginger was only 20 years old at the time. Elvis was 41. Despite the age gap, Elvis was immediately taken with Ginger, who was a local beauty queen, Miss Mid-South, fair runner-up for Miss Tennessee. Their relationship moved incredibly fast. Within weeks of meeting, Elvis was showering Ginger with gifts and attention. He took her on trips, including a notable jaunt to Las Vegas just before Christmas 1976, flying her and her family on the Lisa Marie jet. He seemed eager to integrate her into his life immediately. Just 2 months after they met, in January 1977, Elvis proposed to Ginger in his bathroom at Graceland. He presented her with a massive diamond ring. Reports suggest it was around 11.5 carats, a truly spectacular stone reportedly costing a fortune. Ginger accepted, and they became engaged. Elvis seemed genuinely excited about the prospect of marriage again, telling people about his fiancée. Ginger became a regular presence at Graceland during the final 9 months of Elvis's life. She accompanied him on his last few tours and vacations, including his final vacation to Hawaii in March 1977. Life with Elvis during this period, however, was increasingly challenging. His health was poor, marked by weight gain, reliance on prescription drugs, and erratic behavior. Ginger witnessed this decline firsthand. She described moments of happiness and affection, Elvis singing to her, planning their future. But she also experienced his moods, his health scares, and the suffocating atmosphere created by his fame and his dependencies. Being Elvis's fiancée in 1977 was not a simple fairy tale. It involved navigating a complex and often troubled reality. Their relationship wasn't without friction. Some members of Elvis's long-standing entourage reportedly didn't warm to Ginger or her family, perhaps sensing a shift in Elvis's affections or influence. There were also reports that Ginger sometimes felt overwhelmed or wasn't entirely comfortable with the constant demands and lack of normalcy in Elvis's world. She still lived with her mother when not staying at Graceland. The defining moment of Ginger Alden's connection to Elvis, and the one that cemented her place in his story forever, occurred on August 16, 1977. It was Ginger who discovered Elvis unresponsive on the floor of his bathroom at Graceland early that afternoon. She had been asleep in his bed. Realizing he hadn't come to bed, she went looking for him and made the devastating discovery. Her screams alerted others in the house, setting off the frantic but ultimately futile attempts to revive him. Finding Elvis's body was a traumatic experience that thrust Ginger into the global spotlight in the most tragic way imaginable. As Elvis's fiancée and the last person to see him alive, aside from potentially staff who may have interacted with him briefly later, her account of his final hours became crucial. In the aftermath of Elvis's death, Ginger largely retreated from the public eye for many years. She eventually wrote a book, Elvis and Ginger, published in 2014, giving her perspective on their relationship and his final months. Her account provides intimate details about their time together, the proposal, his health struggles, and that fateful final day. Ginger Alden represents the final romantic chapter of Elvis Presley's life. She was the woman he chose to propose to, the one he planned to marry, and the one fate placed at the scene of his untimely death. Her link to Elvis is intense, poignant, and forever marked by tragedy. Number 1. The beauty queen who lived at Graceland for years. Linda Thompson, a stunning beauty queen, Miss Tennessee Universe 1972, wasn't just linked to Elvis after his divorce. She was his most significant and longest-lasting romantic partner during that period. Their relationship began shortly after Elvis and Priscilla separated, and she became his live-in girlfriend for roughly 4.5 years, from the summer of 1972 until late 1976. This time frame means she was with him before the divorce was finalized in October 1973. But the vast majority of their serious cohabiting relationship occurred after he was officially single again. They met in July 1972 at the Memphian Theater during one of Elvis's private movie screenings. Elvis was immediately smitten by Linda, who was not only beautiful but also intelligent, down-to-earth, and seemed genuinely caring. She was just 22 years old. He was 37, and reeling from his separation from Priscilla. Linda quickly became a fixture in his life, providing comfort, companionship, and a sense of stability he desperately needed. Soon after they started dating, Linda essentially moved into Graceland. She adapted to his nocturnal lifestyle, his entourage, his whims, and his world. She redecorated parts of Graceland, including Elvis's bedroom known as the Jungle Room, trying to make it feel more like a shared home. She wasn't just a girlfriend, she became the lady of the house. Linda accompanied Elvis everywhere on tour, to Las Vegas, to his homes in California and Palm Springs, on vacations. She was a constant presence by his side, both publicly and privately. She tried to create a sense of normalcy within the extraordinary circumstances of his life. She cared for him when he was sick, tried to encourage healthier habits, often unsuccessfully, and provided unwavering emotional support. Their relationship was filled with grand romantic gestures, typical of Elvis. He showered Linda with extravagant gifts: jewelry, furs, cars, and even a house for her parents. He loved taking care of her financially and demonstrating his affection through generosity. They shared private jokes, pet names, and moments of genuine intimacy and fun. Linda often described Elvis as playful, spiritual, and incredibly neurotic. However, life with Elvis wasn't easy. Linda witnessed his increasing dependence on prescription drugs, his struggles with his health and weight, his unpredictable mood swings, and his occasional bouts of paranoia or anger. One famous story she recounted involved Elvis becoming enraged when singer Barbara Leigh appeared on television. Elvis allegedly grabbed a gun and shot the TV set. Linda had to navigate these challenging aspects of his personality and lifestyle. She also had to contend with Elvis's fame and the constant demands on his attention, as well as his occasional infidelities. While Linda was his primary partner, Elvis did see other women during their time together, which inevitably caused strain. Despite this, Linda remained fiercely loyal and protective of him for years. Why did their relationship eventually end? By late 1976, Linda realized she wanted a more normal life, one that wasn't dictated by Elvis's erratic schedule, health problems, and the isolating bubble of his fame. She yearned for marriage and children, things that seemed increasingly unlikely with Elvis in his current state. The constant caretaking had taken its toll. They mutually agreed to part ways, though the split was emotional for both. Linda has said Elvis worried about who would take care of him after she left. Even after their breakup, they remained fond of each other. Linda Thompson's time with Elvis covers the crucial years immediately following his separation and divorce. She was there during his highest highs, like the landmark Aloha from Hawaii concert, and his deepening lows. Her perspective shared in interviews, and her memoir provides invaluable insight into Elvis's personality, his struggles, and his deep need for love and companionship during his final years. She wasn't just a fleeting romance. She was a partner who shared his life intimately for a significant period, making her arguably the most important woman linked to Elvis after Priscilla.